Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
Today, Wednesday, March 24th, is the feast of St. Catherine of Sweden. And these are today's headlines. Pope Francis appeals for prayers for victims of terrorist attacks in Niger. A massive fire has swept through a Rohingya refugee camp in Bangladesh. And cardinals and other senior officials will have their salaries cut in Vatican efforts to control costs. In the Vatican, I'm Christopher Wells. Our top story today, Pope Francis expressed grief for victims of terrorist attacks in Niger and closeness to people and communities in Australia affected by devastating floods. The Pope was speaking during his weekly general audience held today in the Library of the Apostolic Palace due to coronavirus restrictions imposed by the state. As Linda Bordoni reports, the Pope appeals for prayers for the stricken communities in West Africa and Oceania.
I have learnt with sorrow of the news of the recent terrorist attacks in Niger, which resulted in the death of 137 people, Pope Francis said, adding that he is praying for the victims, for their families and for the entire population.
Preghiamo per le vittime, per le loro famiglie, per l'intera popolazione.
He also expressed his hope that the violence they have suffered will not cause them to lose faith in the path of democracy, justice and peace. The nation, meanwhile, is observing 3 days of national mourning for the 137 victims of coordinated raids on villages in the southwest. The killings on Sunday represent Niger's worst civilian massacre in recent memory, surpassing an attack by suspected militants in January that killed at least 100 villagers and another last week that killed at least 58. Niger's security sources say the attacks, which were carried out by men on motorbikes near the border with Mali, were perpetrated by the local Islamic State affiliate that has claimed responsibility for previous raids against security forces and French aid workers in the former French colony. And turning his thoughts to the people of Australia, who in the past year have been suffering from extreme weather conditions, the Pope said in these days great floods have caused serious damage in the state of New South Wales. I am close, he continued, to the people and families who are affected by this calamity, especially those who have seen their homes destroyed. News reports today said rescuers retrieved the body of a man found in a car trapped by floodwaters in New South Wales. It's the first death linked to flooding across Australia in recent days that has submerged houses, swept away cars and livestock, and cut off entire towns. The Pope also had words of encouragement for those who are working to search for the missing and bring relief. More than 40,000 people have been forced to flee their homes as torrential rain sparked dangerous flash floods, and authorities issued new evacuation orders for residents in Sydney's western regions to move to safer zones. I'm Linda Bordoni.
In other news, celebrating 2 historical births, Pope Francis sent a video message on Wednesday to the people of Bangladesh. The first celebration is for the birth centenary of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and the second is for the 50th anniversary of the independence of Bangladesh. Francesca Merlo tells us more.
Opening his message, Pope Francis welcomed the 2 occasions as an opportunity to offer his heartfelt greetings and best wishes to all the beloved people of Bangladesh. Pope Francis went on to note that Bangladesh is a country of unique natural beauty and a modern nation that strives to join unity of language and culture with respect for the different traditions and communities within it.
Questa è una delle eredità che lo Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.
This, he continued, is one of the legacies which Sheikh Mujibur Rahman left for all Bangladeshis. The Pope explained that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman promoted a culture of dialogue marked by wisdom, insight and breadth of vision, adding that he knew that it is only in such a pluralistic and inclusive society in which every person could live in freedom, peace and security that a more just and fraternal world can be built. The Pope noted that he experienced this cultural heritage and legacy during his apostolic visit to Bangladesh in August 2017.
Il Bangladesh ha sempre avuto un posto speciale nel cuore dei papi.
Bangladesh, he said, has always had a special place in the heart of the popes, who from the start have expressed solidarity with its people, sought to accompany them in overcoming initial adversities, and supported them in the demanding task of nation building and development. The Pope then expressed his hope that the good relations between the Holy See and Bangladesh will continue to flourish. Concluding his video message, the Pope said, as a friend of Bangladesh, I encourage each of you, particularly the younger generations, to devote yourselves anew to working for peace and prosperity for the noble nation that you represent. And, he said finally, I ask all of you to continue in your work of generosity and humanitarian outreach to the refugees, the poor, the underprivileged, and those who have no voice. I'm Francesca Merlo.
In other news from Bangladesh, aid agencies are rushing emergency assistance to thousands of refugees affected by a massive fire that swept through a Rohingya refugee camp in the southern part of the country. The fire killed 15 people, injured several others, and caused massive damage to shelters and essential facilities. Father Benedict Mayaki has the story.
At least 15 people were killed in a fire that swept through the sprawling Rohingya refugee camp in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh on Monday. Reports indicate that the fire destroyed at least 10,000 shelters as it blazed through the camp. Several people were injured and an estimated 45,000 people were displaced. Some essential facilities, including distribution points, learning centers, and a health clinic, were also damaged in the fire. Cox's Bazar is one of the world's largest refugee camps. It houses an estimated 800 to 900,000 Rohingya refugees who fled the violence in Myanmar in 2017. A significant percentage of the refugee population there consists of children. In the immediate aftermath of the fire, several aid agencies rushed in emergency assistance to tens of thousands of victims. Officials say that they are uncertain about the cause of the catastrophic fire. Responding to the emergency, the UN said that World Food Programme engineering and field personnel, as well as food assistance teams, have been on ground since the fire was first reported. Bangladeshi government agencies, NGOs, and other humanitarian organizations are also present to respond to the situation by delivering emergency supplies, including blankets and clean drinking water. The UN is also providing meals for the affected, as well as ambulances and medical teams to respond to injuries and to provide mental health and psychosocial support. The Rohingya refugee crisis began in August 2017 after attacks on police outposts in western Myanmar by armed groups allegedly belonging to the Rohingya community. These attacks were subsequently followed by military-led counterattacks against this predominantly Muslim minority group. In the period that followed, over 700,000 Rohingya fled their homes for safety into Bangladesh, the majority of them women, children, and the elderly. I'm Father Benedict Mayaki.
Briefly from Scotland, coronavirus regulations that forced the closure of churches throughout the country have been deemed unlawful. A group of 27 church leaders launched a case arguing Scottish government ministers acted beyond their powers when ordering the closure of places of worship under emergency legislation. Judge Lord Braid, in his judgment, found the Scottish government regulations were unlawful as they disproportionately interfered with the freedom of religion secured in the European Convention on Human Rights. The ruling comes ahead of new guidance expected out on Friday, which would allow churches to open with congregations of up to 50 people. Returning to news from here at the Vatican, Pope Francis has issued an apostolic letter in the form of a motu proprio regarding the need to contain costs connected to employee salaries at the Vatican, the Holy See, and associated institutions. The new document notes that pay reductions due to shortages resulting especially from the pandemic and resulting economic crisis the world is facing will primarily affect cardinals, department heads, and other senior staff. Thaddeus Jones has this report.
The opening words in the motu proprio state that a sustainable economic future requires today, among other decisions, adopting measures that also concern employee salaries. The document notes how Pope Francis has decided to cut proportionally and indefinitely the salaries of cardinals by 10%, department heads and secretaries by 8%, and all priests and religious in service at the Holy See by 3%. All employees will also have automatic pay increases frozen until 2023, except for the lowest paid lay employees. The Pope wants to ensure that employees not be laid off. However, as costs must be contained, he has decided to act according to criteria of proportionality and progressivity, with some adjustments regarding above all clergy, religious, and those with higher pay grade levels. According to the motu proprio, the Pope's decision is motivated by the deficit over the years affecting the financial management of the Holy See, and above all the situation caused by the pandemic that has negatively influenced all sources of income for the Holy See and Vatican City-State. The provisions are intended to contribute, along with other measures, to assuring a sustainable financial future for the mission of the central offices of the Church. I'm Thaddeus Jones.
And finally, Pope Francis, as we mentioned already, held his general audience on Wednesday morning in the library of the Apostolic Palace due to continuing COVID-related restrictions. In his catechesis during the audience, Pope Francis reflected on the theme of prayer in communion with Mary, saying Our Lady is at the bedside of those who die alone, especially during the pandemic. Devin Watkins tells us more.
As the Church prepared to celebrate the Feast of the Annunciation on Thursday, Pope Francis reflected on the maternal intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Speaking at the Wednesday general audience, the Pope focused his catechesis on prayer in communion with Mary. He began by noting the centrality of Jesus in all forms of Christian prayer. Each prayer we raise to God is through Christ, with Christ, and in Christ, and is fulfilled thanks to His intercession, said the Pope, adding that Christ is the only Redeemer. There are no co-redeemers with Christ. Pope Francis went on to say that Christ's mediation for us with the Father gives meaning to the other references which Christians turn to in prayer, first among them being the Virgin Mary, the Mother of God.
Ella occupa nella vita e anche nella preghiera del cristiano un posto privilegiato.
She occupies a privileged place in the lives of Christians, he said, and therefore in their prayer as well, because she is the Mother of Jesus. The Holy Father recalled how the Eastern churches describe her with the Greek term hodegetria, the one who shows the way to her Son. Jesus, said the Pope, extended Mary's maternity to all members of the Church when he entrusted her to his beloved disciple who stood at the foot of the cross. Just as she stayed near her dying Son in his last moments, said Pope Francis, so she remains with those who are dying.
Maria è sempre presente al capezzale dei suoi figli che partono da questo mondo.
Mary is always present at the bedside of her children when they depart this world, he said. If someone is alone and abandoned, she is there, near, as she was next to her Son when everyone else abandoned him. During the COVID-19 pandemic, as so many people die alone in hospital due to social restrictions, Mary accompanies those who are on their deathbed in solitude. She is with those who die without the comfort of their loved ones, said the Pope, with her maternal tenderness. Prayers said to her are not in vain, he added. She hears our voices, even those that remain closed in our hearts.
Maria è lì a pregare per noi.
Mary is there, he said, praying for us, praying for those who do not pray, because she is our mother. I'm Devin Watkins.
And that brings us just about to the end of this edition of Vatican and World News. For more on these and other stories, and to hear this broadcast as a podcast, please be sure to visit our web portal at www.vaticannews.va. Many thanks to our producers and technicians in studio. In the Vatican, I'm Christopher Wells.